Hi and welcome to a very special episode of the We Need Heroes podcast as we bid farewell to Laurie Nunn's Sex Education as the fourth and final season has now dropped on Netflix. I'm joined for our last trip to Moordale, well actually that was last season, and it's our first trip to Cavendish College by Ben, and we are joined by a special guest today, as let's face it, two guys talking about sex education by themselves is probably a mistake, so we have one half of the Two Girls and One Reusable Cup podcast and a sex education fan, Marie, joining us today. So hey Marie, excited for you to join us today?
Yeah, really happy to be here. Impressed that you got that intro down in one. It takes me multiple takes to get ours done.
That was really forgiving. I love that. I love that she made out that you did that in one take. That was really kind of you, Marie.
I mean, it's been a long day and I haven't got time for your shit, Ben. But
you did it in one. All right, you win.
So Marie, tell us about your podcast and what you do.
So my podcast is called Two Girls, One Reusable Cup. Despite the slightly sexual title, it's all about living a low-waste lifestyle in your 20s. So every week we pick a topic that is related to sustainability, for example, smartphones, or our next episode is about the ultra fashion giant Shein, and basically a takedown episode about them and their effects on the environment. Yeah, it's just me and my co-host Beth, and I'm the researcher, and then she tries to make me funny, and that's the podcast.
Nice, yeah. We have the same issue with everyone trying to be funny sometimes, and
well, you have that problem,
and I think I'm the only one who does research as well, right?
You absolutely have that problem with being funny. I'm hilarious.
You are now was you the second new co-host, Ben, when you came on?
I was, yes.
So we had David, the OG co-host with me, who basically hasn't watched TV or movies for the last 3 months because he's been playing video games.
Oh, bless him.
He's also recently married and he's got a puppy and a house. So first up, as you're the guest, Marie, what do you love about Sex Education, the show?
Well, first of all, I think it's hilarious. I think it's a very refreshing comedy. When it first came out, like a lot of stories focused around teens are teen dramas. So the fact that this was a comedy, I think was very refreshing. I also love how it normalizes therapy and the importance about talking about your feelings, which I think when you look at shows in the 90s, therapy has always been like a bad thing. It's always been like followed by the word crazy. And I think that's become like a damaging trend. So the fact that this show really like emphasizes the importance about therapy and it's not a bad thing to talk about your feelings, I really love that for it. And I'm totally team therapy. Like I think therapy is amazing. And then on a personal note, this show played a great part in my coming out journey and my self-acceptance journey, just because of the sheer amount of representation there is. And most of the challenges the characters have faced, I faced in my personal life as well. So it just made me feel less alone. I wish this show was around when I was a teenager.
Wow, I mean, you can't say more than that, can you?
Wow.
Ben, what have you got?
Oh, come on, that's not fair.
Did say I was a fan.
I mean, like, I guess I watch this show from the point of view of like a heterosexual 43-year-old, you know, like, and it's like, and I get just as much from it. Like it asked me questions that I didn't know needed to be asked. I found things out that I didn't know would affect people. It made me ask questions of myself and my like journey through adolescence into like, you know, the old part of middle age. Like it just, there are characters that resonate with young me, with old me, with me that I'm going to be in 20 years. You know, like the representation is ridiculously well thought out. And like the extreme versions of some people that I now know are just people. Like they're not extreme versions, they're just people. Like the entire show just gave me a viewpoint that I'm very grateful for, and like to see into a world of that I didn't, you know, I don't want to say I didn't understand, but like I wasn't aware of, is probably more accurate. So, like, to me, the show means to me something more than it just being a funny, caring, like, emotional show. It's like it's important in the social zeitgeist of it's just more than a show to me. Like, it was just everything that I wanted and needed from a TV show, and it gave me this other incredible viewpoint, and it's hilarious, and it's heartbreaking. It's everything. It was just fantastic. No notes.
No notes. Well, that lovely monologue. Sorry, we're 2 for 2 now. So, yeah, I mean, I've pretty much got a lot less than that. I was literally going to say, for me, it was a normalization and just addressing many of the issues that teenagers face these days. And like Ben, someone who's in their 40s, like me, I'm like Ben, someone in my 40s. And so a lot of these issues I wasn't even aware were issues as I was watching the show. I mean, we grew up in a generation without mobile phones when we were at school. Can you imagine that? We didn't have anything like that to really worry about or think about. But that's why we need shows like Sex Education. I mean, the words are literally the title of the show, right? It's there to break down every myth and taboo to do with sex. And if you don't understand what and why many of the subjects are raised in the show are important, not just to young people, but to everyone, then that's clearly why you should be watching the show, right? Let's move on to our recap. So we're going to be talking about season 4 and just the show overall coming up. But let's have a quick refresh of what happened in season 3. So the end of season 3 saw Eric and Adam split up. We found out that Jacob was not the father of Jean's baby. Maeve and Otis finally get together, only for her to immediately leave for America and a prestigious writing scholarship. Amy breaks up with Steve after a chat with Adam's mum, Maureen. Remember, Amy and Adam were together at the start of season 1. Lily embraces her alien side and gets back together with Ola. Jackson and Cal decide to stay friends, and the show remembered it had cast Hannah Waddingham as one of Jackson's mums and gave her a little bit more to do last season. We meet Viv's boyfriend, and Maureen and Michael didn't get back together in season 3. And that's kind of the broad strokes, phrasing, Ben, of season 3. I know, the little fact that Moordale is shut down as it goes bankrupt. Which means, as we start season 4, we follow our core characters of Otis, Eric, Jackson, Ruby, Cal, Viv, Amy and Isaac as they head to Cavendish College. Well, Maeve is in the States and Adam decides college is not for him. Of course, this means certain characters like Lily and Ola are just gone and never mentioned again, which I thought kind of sucked. For me, the season's biggest mishap was introducing so many new characters to the final season of the show. You have Otis's rival college sex therapist, played by Tadia Graham. You got Schitt's Creek star Dan Levy playing Maeve's bitter writing tutor in the States. You have Alexander James as Aisha, a deaf character who's part of The Coven, which is the college's faction of cool girls, completed by Anthony Alexa, who is trans feminine as Abby, the head of the Coven, and her partner Roman, played by Felix Mufti, who is trans masculine, and what might be the first major trans couple in a show, played by trans actors. So, again, like as we always say, it's a big win for terms of representation here. We also have Mr. Groff coming back aimless and completely out of his depth as a supply teacher at a trendy college when he was like the head of the repressed Moordale in the previous seasons. It made me laugh actually when we saw like Cavendish College. So seriously, just everyone gets an iPad now. Is that apparently a thing? We didn't have computers, Ben, when we were at school. There was no computers. We have Aussie comedian Hannah Gadsby as Jean's new boss at the radio station, as Jean deals with postnatal depression while trying to launch a sex talk show herself. And her situation is not helped by the arrival of her sister Joanna, played by Lisa McGillis, who is just a pure agent of chaos. So, to give us some structure, I thought we would work through our way through the characters and do we think the show resolved their storyline satisfactorily? So, first up, we're going to start with Asa Butterfield's Otis. Marie, what did you think about Otis this season?
He pissed me off so much. I was so annoyed by Otis this season. Yeah, I remember watching it thinking, I liked this character at one point, didn't I? But it's just the decisions that he makes, and it was like his entire story was conflict with conflict with Eric, conflict with Maeve, and it just didn't make any sense. Like, especially the one with the fact that there was another rival sex therapist, that just the conflict was unnecessary, and in the end it proved to be absolutely unnecessary. It went nowhere, and it was resolved by a 5-minute conversation in an elevator. Like, it's just wasn't important. And just from a therapy perspective, it's good to have a choice between two therapists, so it didn't even make sense from that perspective. He was just a massive dick to and I think it would have made more sense if was like Sex King in season 3, where she was actually dealing out damaging advice, but they actually made her, like, even when we get introduced to her, like, a genuinely nice person who just wants to help people. So Otis being immediately hostile towards her just makes no sense whatsoever. And then for the billionth time, we've got conflict with Eric. Like, we had it so many times, and it also ruined the beautiful moment him and Otis had in the hospital when Joy was born, and it just ruined everything. And then he also starts acting dickish towards Maeve, although when Maeve does come back to the UK, he is there for her, and I did really like that. But yeah, in general, did not like the guy this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a bit of a wet blanket, really. Like, he has no agency of his own. The whole season, and like indeed most of all the seasons, he revolves around what Maeve's situation is and not his own. You know, we know he's a sex therapist, but only because his mum was. So, you know, the classic original Nepo baby. He's a sex Nepo baby. And do we ever learn what his thoughts for the future are? Where he sees himself, or what does he want to do? No, because the show doesn't establish it. It's whatever Maeve's doing is what he wants to do. I didn't think the long distance relationship really worked because we got no sense of how long Maeve was going to be away for, or how long she was going to be, or, you know, it seemed like, oh, she's only going to be a couple of months. Oh, that's fine. Also, the big thing is he treats Ruby like crap again, who you see genuinely does care for him, and every interaction he has with her in the series is him wanting to help her for his own reasons. No, he never does anything. So, like you say, he's just a massive dick. Like you covered, we also have him and Eric falling out, and like, I could totally see Eric's point of view on it. Look, you know, when they were at Moordale, like, Eric was the only kind of outwardly gay student there. When he goes to college, he's not. He's got his people there. Like, he's got all these new friends he's going to make, and that does happen when you go to school. When you go from school to college and from college to uni and all that, you do meet new friends. You do have new social circles. So they could, like you say, instead of just having that stupid argument over, oh well, you went out with your new friends and I didn't, and that was like their main argument. They could have told the story a lot better over those 10 episodes of just like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to hang out with them. Okay, that's fine. And then slowly, and that would have been a bit more realistic. But again, why do we need the extra drama with Otis and Eric there? Ben?
Nah, you're both wrong. Absolutely. He was wonderful this season. What are you talking about? So, like,
I feel like you're mocking me.
No, not at all. Like, I think that Asa Butterfield and Otis, like, as characters, they're like, season 4, because he's so well established as a character, they use him as this pendulum to trigger other people's storylines and to really, really like bounce off of. And I think that, like, you can only do that with a character as well established as Otis. Like, at the start, he does try to be friends with O, but she basically says, yeah, I'm the only therapist on campus. Like, I'm the only one that matters. And that's what kind of sparks that rivalry. And it doesn't start out, for me, it didn't start out as rivalry. It started out as him trying to be like, oh, well, I can do this as well. Or, you know, I think there was a point at which I was yelling at the TV screen, which is I do with this show. Like, why don't you just do it together, for God's sake? And which is obviously where they end up. But like, I think the representation of Otis, the stuff that you both talked about, is that they've got 10, 13 episodes to like squeeze in the entire of a school year. To get all those storylines in, you needed someone to be like the emotional like rubber ball to like bounce all these ideas off of. And he's the only person that's that well established, apart from Maeve, who can really survive those negative interactions with other characters and come out shining on the other side of it. Because he spends a lot of his time throughout this entire show apologizing to Maeve, but he spends a lot of time making mistakes and owning those mistakes. And I think that's kind of like the crux of his character, is that like he makes bad decisions with good intentions and then apologizes for that. And I think they took that to maybe a little bit too far in season 4, maybe, but I still think that like him, like his like moral compass like guided the show, and I think that was really, really important.
Well, I will throw in there, I listened to an interview with Laurie Nunn, the creator of the show, and she did a spoiler podcast with Pilot TV guys. And in that, they were talking about Otis, and like one of the guys on the pod was exactly the same as us. Was like, Otis was a dick, and she's like, yeah, but he needed to be a dick. He needed to be that character, and I think you kind of hit it there, Ben. Where like he's the one who everyone else, he can go through all these things and he's okay, really. he hasn't got all these major issues like the other characters are having to go through. Like you say, he does apologise a lot. But she said a lot of it was down to Asa Butterfield. She goes, if it wasn't him casting it, you would hate it. You'd really hate the character. But because we've established him over like the 4 seasons, he cocks up a lot, but he does try to do the right thing most of the time. I can kind of see her point there. But I mean, at the time when I watched season 4, I was like, Otis, you're a knob.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the season ends with him wistfully looking out the window, reading Maeve's letter, which basically said, oh yeah, cheers, you made me open up my heart, and now I'm going to have this super cool, amazing life overseas, but without you. Otis didn't really have a lot going on, did he? We didn't know what he wanted to do. And I was watching it going, why don't he just go to America?
I was doing the same thing. I was stood up in my front room going, just go to America. Kids need therapists out there. Do it. Like, honestly, just yelling at my TV.
More than in the UK.
Maybe just the same. I don't know. Everyone needs therapy. Come on, we can all do with a bit of it. Like, I was just, get out there, go to America. There's nothing stopping you, you fool. That was the bit that annoyed me about Otis.
The reason for that as well, with that like relationship, again, the writer Laurie Nunn, she said, look, they're supposed to be teenagers, like 17, 18. You don't end up with the person you're going to be with. It was never like, none of these characters are going to be with the people they're going to be with long term when like the show ends, is what her like vision of it was. So I can kind of knowing that intention, I'm kind of like, okay, I kind of reeled back some of my like vitriol about how some of the characters ended up there. So I think that covers off Otis. 2 of us thought he was a dick. Ben thought he was okay.
Team Otis.
So next up, we're going to talk Emma Mackey's Maeve Wiley, not Willie, as it's mispronounced once in the show. Marie, if you want to start us off with Maeve.
I really liked Maeve's journey in the end. I really like that she didn't end up with Otis. Don't make any major life decisions when you're 17. What I did like is that she did really enjoy America. I think sometimes what happens with like shows, like the character gets their dream job or their dream school and they go off and then they realize, oh no, friendship was more important than my career. And then they completely go back. And I like that she actually likes America and says, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. But I did think the show really struggled when she was apart from the rest of the gang. Like the first 3 episodes when she was in America, I was a bit bored because I think Maeve is the heart of the show. Like she's the one who puts the entire plot in motion by starting the sex clinic with Otis. And the fact that she was separate, especially her being separate from Amy, I think that was very noticeable. And for me personally, the show picked up when Maeve came back to the UK. And also, like, how relieved were you when you realized it was Maeve's mom that died and that was the funeral that they were at? Because we were getting worried because we saw the black clothes in the trailer and we were like, okay, who died? What's happening here?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I thought they couldn't kill one of the kids. That'd be a bit too dark.
Yeah.
Who's most likely? Okay, yeah, it's her mum. Which
I was kind of like, all bets were off, man. I was like, I'm down for
final season,
and this is it. Like, yeah, like if they were gonna, because I was like, is that the last episode? Like, because it's one of those shows where you can kind of see it going to that place and being like, yeah, and guess what, guys? Fuck you. That's what life's all about. Like, it sucks sometimes. Also, it's brilliant sometimes. And it's like, guess what? That person's fucking dead now. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be brutal. So I was kind of like, I was along for the ride, but relieved, I guess, when it was relieved when someone dies. That's a horrible thing to say.
I know, it sounds so weird, but I was so happy it wasn't any of the core cast.
Yeah, no, like me too. Because I mean, especially with it being that early on in the show as well. Like, you know, that could have, had they have killed someone off like episode 2, like I don't know, anyone like Ruby or someone, like you're just like, what? How do you recover from that? That sucks. But yeah, like to drive Maeve's story, to have her mum die like that, and she's kind of the mother figure to her, you know, her little sister anyway, even though that she's in foster care and stuff. Like I was like, yeah, that's like, her emotional growth is the one that I've followed closely and was very much just like, yeah, man, like she's the underdog almost, and now it's all about her and it's great.
I mean, yeah, I think the whole show really does revolve around her. Like, she's the star of the show, isn't she? You look like even Emma. Like, look at their careers since the show, and Emma McKay is like the big star out there and going all these big Hollywood films now. And yes, as I've mentioned previously on podcast, Death on the Nile. Any scene she's in with Gal Gadot, you're like, oh, Gal Gadot, I forgot you can't actually act when you're in a scene with someone who's decent, like Emma McKay. I'm sorry, she just absolutely wipes the floor with her every time.
She's hilarious in the Barbie movie as well. Like, she's like as like being that close, like being that close to that caliber of actor, and just being able to sort of almost like shrug it off and just do her like some of the bloopers and some of the funny stuff I've seen of her work afterwards. It's just phenomenal. I think she's an incredible talent, like just outside of this. But you're right. Like, I agree that she is completely the heart of this piece. But like, that heart is only only realized with Otis. Like, and that is, and like, it those two characters together. Like, he writes her a letter in season 1, which kicks the whole thing off, really. She writes him a letter at the end of season 4, which ends the whole thing. It is actually tied up quite nicely in a neat little bow. And there are moments where where even Maeve's character is a dick. But I think that her character, the dick moves that she makes, everyone gets behind her. It's like, yeah, fucking right. That's exactly what you should do in that situation. You might be being a dick to someone. However, I'm on your side for that dickish move.
Well, speaking of her dick moves, the scene I had was when Amy tells her that she started becoming friendly with Isaac. And at first it seems like Maeve's completely fine with it because she laughs and she's like, oh yeah, no, you're not a shit friend. Because Amy does exactly the right thing. And then it's like a switch flips, and she's like, Maeve gets really snotty about it. It's like, oh, I can't talk about this right now. It just felt really weird. And then the next episode, she says that Amy and Isaac would make her uncomfortable. And I just don't get it. There was like the thing for Maeve. I was like, well, okay, but your mum's died in the previous episode. So why is the show? Is it like, were they going for like a delayed trauma thing? Maybe, and that's why she was kind of being a dick about it. I mean, at the end, she does say, oh, yes, you guys should be together. Well, yeah, we knew that. Well, like the second the two of them shared, like Isaac and Amy shared a scene together at the start of the show, it was like, and that's where they're going heading with these two, isn't it? You know?
Maeve's reaction, I think that whole thing was like, everybody deals with trauma and death, like, especially very, very differently. And Maeve was trying to be like, for me, she was like putting that to one side and being like, I can't talk about this now, even though I want to process it and ultimately like give you guys the green light. I just can't. Like, I'm dealing with this enormous trauma over here. And I think what that said to me was like, you know what, actually it's all right. If your friends are your friends, like, and the people you care about understand you, you can ask them for that bit of time. She didn't do it in a very good way, because who among us handles life perfectly? Like, I don't think that's something that I would ever say that I would ever aspire to do, because it would just be failure after failure. But she handles it in a very real way. Like, she's like, look, I just can't deal with this right now. My fucking mum died. Like, and you're dropping this in my lap? Get the fuck out of here, man. Like, I can't deal with that. Like, I don't think it was like a well thought out reaction. And she just knee jerked, and that's what happened. And I've been in traumatic situations where I've reacted completely differently to the way that I would react, and then I've gone back on it and gone, you know what? I had a lot going on. I'm really sorry. This is how I feel, and this is the thing. So I get that completely.
I completely agree. I had that, like, I also thought, like, oh, she just couldn't deal with it at the moment because she was grieving her mom, and she had such a complicated relationship with her mom. So it was just such a, like, it wasn't even like the grief was like on a whole nother level, because she didn't have a great relationship, but then then her mom is gone. Her mom is her mom, and now she's gone. So, and I was a little annoyed at her, but I completely understood. And her reasoning, like, going to Amy and Isaac, like, you're the only family that I have, and losing you, I don't know what I would do. I think I bought that. I thought that was a very justified reasoning. And I think it makes sense. I mean, like, whenever like someone in a friend group starts dating, you're immediately kind of panic, like, what happens if they break up? Like, whose side are we gonna, like, who's gonna take whose side in the breakup and stuff like that? And it's just, I think Maeve was maybe like panicking a bit, like, oh, like if this doesn't go well, then am I going to lose both of them? And so I do understand, and I understand her reasoning behind her just being a little bit pissed off about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the funeral, I really liked the reconciliation between Isaac and Maeve at the funeral when she's like, hiding along and hiding in the back of the car. And I didn't realise. So, Marie, do you have ghosts in Portugal, the British sitcom comedy?
No, we don't. I know of it, but no, I haven't seen it.
What about you, Ben? Have you seen Ghosts?
No, but I love that you called it a sitcom comedy.
Okay, well,
just because because sitcom means situational comedy, right? And you went to university for this, didn't you? Didn't you? Didn't you go to university?
Yes. Only the 5 years.
Yeah, okay. Oh, maybe the 6th year covered that.
Have you watched Ghosts or not, Ben?
No,
that was a question.
No, I haven't.
Okay, fine. Yes. Anyway, right. So look, there's a character in Ghosts who's like a scoutmaster who was killed by an arrow through the neck, and he's got this arrow sticking out of his neck the whole time in every episode of the whole show. And he's like a proper Northern Yorkshire. Yeah,
because he's a ghost.
So the way he died, that's how he stays. I'm coming back to it ties into sex education, trust me. So, and also the guy's called Pat Butcher. That's his name.
Really?
Another like in joke. Yeah.
That's terrible. But yeah, go on.
But the actor, he's like a proper like Northern Yorkshire guy. He is the school teacher in sex education who sings U2 at the piano. The same guy. And I did not recognise him at all.
He's fucking great, that guy.
Yeah, I didn't recognise him at all. So take about Jim Howick is his name.
Jim Howick. Okay. He single-handedly made U2 cool. Like, I mean,
I'm Irish. I'm Irish. So that you're getting into some conflict here. I feel like I need to protect my Irish roots.
It's fine. Do you remember? I mean, you might be. I don't want to say this in a condescending way, but you might be a little bit too young to remember when U2 forced everybody to have their album on Apple Music. It was like you woke up one morning and on your fucking iPod or like whatever device you had or on your iTunes, it was just they had just given this album away, and everybody was like, "You can't do that. You can't just force your music onto me, U2. That's not cool." And since then, they haven't been cool. All right, they just opened the Sphere in Vegas, and U2 are doing a residency, and most of the memes are like, look at U2 getting in the way of this incredible new venue. But that song, oh my God, come on. And the way they put it in, that got, and you know what I did? I went back and I downloaded U2's greatest hits, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, ain't that bad.
That is not where I expected that story to go, man.
Yeah, With or Without You is U2's like best song in my opinion. Like, but that scene was so amazing. I love that, like them all coming together, and it could have so easily played like hilarious, but it just was like the right amount of funny, but also like sobbing your way through it as well. I thought it was very impactful, and I thought it was a very sweet scene at the funeral. Them all singing.
It was played perfectly, and it was the two teachers that seemed to care the most about the kids, were always on the kids' side, that rallied and she's like, yeah, do you know it? And he's like, well, yeah, and he awkwardly goes up there to play it, and it's beautiful, and you're just like, oh, come on, man, like, I don't want to cry at a U2 song. Fuck.
So yeah, I mean, after this, we kind of move on to Maeve and Otis having their first proper date at a cinema where apparently the whole college and town has gone to see Brief Encounter. Foreshadowing. But I mean, I was just looking at it going, well, that's just unreal. Honestly, you would go to the cinema and almost everyone you went to college with goes to the same cinema at the same time to see a really old film at the same time. Obviously a classic, but I was like, I don't buy that all these people would be there at the same time. That was my biggest problem with the scene.
That was your biggest problem with the scene? There's no problem with that scene whatsoever. They live in a tiny village, man. Come on. There's not a lot to do there. Also, you're also, like, if you're going to get into, like, that deep, they all wear 80s clothes, and the whole thing is, like, stylistically 80s. So, like, you know, it's, just let go of your fucking disbelief, man. Come on, just let it happen.
Anyway.
It's not real.
I was about to say, their date gets gate crashed by perhaps the best new character of the season for me, drunken Aunt Joanna. and she's just superb. I loved her. I thought Elisa McGillis was fucking amazing. I mean, she comes in, she snuck her tequila in. Oh no, Maeve stole the tequila,
Maeve did that, yeah.
and then they both get drunk in the cinema, and then get kicked out of the cinema. And of course, this leads to Maeve and Otis breaking into Mordau and trying to have sex, which of course goes badly and ends up with Maeve getting a black eye and a panic attack for Otis.
I mean, we've all been there, right?
I don't think we've had. Can't remember the first date going that badly. No.
No. Lisa McGillis. She came in with some Olivia Colman energy at one point, and I was like, "This is cool. Like, she's rad. Like that. Yeah, she was fantastic."
Yeah, she was like the definition of the cool aunt immediately, wasn't she? She was just like...
I was just saying, that's the thing about the show. They introduce so many new characters, but then the characters are actually good, so you can't really complain. But because I thought she was a welcomed addition as well.
Yeah, I had that exact issue. I was like, there's so many new characters. It's the final season. We're not spending enough time with the key characters that we've watched and loved over the previous seasons. But because it's a new college, you have to have all these new supporting characters, and you have to pad out the cast. But by giving all this new cast, all these storylines, I mean, I thought Adam was quite underserved in this series compared to the previous ones, because I was never 100% sure whether he was gay or bisexual, and then they kind of clear it up and go, oh no, he says that outright, he's like, oh no, I'm bisexual. But I couldn't remember that, so I don't know whether in the previous seasons it was really established.
I don't think it was.
No, I can't remember. We are going to defer to Marie on this because she's clearly a bigger fan of the show than we are.
No, I think he did say in season 2 that he's bisexual, where he realizes that he's attractive to both genders. And just in general, it's in a way it's important to reinstate that, just because there's a lot of bi-erasure going on, and people immediately assume because you're dating a man that you're gay, and so him saying, correcting his dad, going, oh, bi actually is I think it was very important. But I'm pretty sure they established that early on. Yeah, because he dated Amy before that, and then Eric, and I think he had equal amounts of attraction to both of them. So I think it's I don't think it was it's a new thing in this season that he's bi.
No, I mean, at least with Adam's character, although he wasn't in it as much, and you think how central he was to the first couple of seasons, his storyline with Eric. It was so central and probably the best storyline in some of the seasons, I think, and their development. And he just gets shipped off to the farm, and he's like, "Well, so what do you want to do with your life, Adam?" I like dogs. I like horses. Well, he didn't like horses, but he learned to like horses. And okay, here's Horse Girl, because let's face it, the character didn't really have a name. Okay, we're going to put you together with Horse Girl, but we're going to keep it really subtle, just and you and Horse Girl can just be off, and you get maybe 2 minutes an episode.
Yeah, that was criminal. He's one of my favourite characters in the whole show.
Yeah.
And he's had really the career as well, Connor Swindell. He was a lead in Vigil. Oh, no, so he wasn't lead. He was one of the main... He was a main character in Vigil, which was the BBC One submarine drama the other year. He also was in Barbie.
Oh, yeah.
As the intern, wasn't he?
He did the BBC's SAS show, how the SAS started. I can't remember what it was called. He was phenomenal in that. He plays the lead, one of the main guys that starts the SAS, and he is polar opposite to his character in Sex Education, and it blew my mind. I was like, this guy's got chops. This is an impressive actor. He's going to go on to do amazing things. And like I say, his character in Sex Education, like Adam, his relationship with his dad and his mum, the divorce, him coming out, him and Eric's awkward relationship, just absolutely every part of that. But there's always the mysterious quiet kid at school who everybody's just you don't really pay much attention, or everyone is scared of them or whatever. He played that so well, and I wasn't any of those kids at school, but I related really hard to his character. I felt like I was part of his journey. It was hugely impactful for me.
Yeah, should have given Adam more to do. I will say, getting back, because I was in the middle of my Maeve notes and I went off on a massive tangent. So the last two things I wanted to say about Maeve was her stuff in the States. I'm sorry, but season 1 Maeve wouldn't have took any shit off anyone. And they're Dan Levy's drunken, bitter old professor goes, "Oh yeah, you're not that good." And she's like, "Oh, okay, then I'm going to go home and be sad about it." I'm sorry. Maeve would have, previous season Maeve, for me anyway, would have just told him to go fuck himself and do what she wanted.
I mean, I think she's a bit... she was a bit out of her depth. She was not in basically her arena, the place that she's comfortable in. And I think that happens quite a bit. I mean, it reminded me of when I went to university. I did not study writing, but I studied fashion, which is, I mean, extremely, I don't want to say cutthroat, but they do like to grind you down and beat you up in a fashion course. And one of the teachers once went to us and said, okay, out of curiosity, which one of you were the top of your class when it came to art? And like all of us put up their hand. And then she was like, oh, out of curiosity, which of you still think you would be the top? Then she knows that, and then also, who here thought would be the top of the class? And all of us put up their hand. And that's kind of the thing with Maeve. She was the top of her class when there was not much competition. But now that she's like in America at this prestigious writing scholarship where everyone was top of the class, I think suddenly she felt a bit out of her depth. And especially with someone like I don't know, I can't remember the character's name. I'm just going to call him Dan Levy. Dan Levy's character, she admired him so much. Like, she's not even just read one of his books. I think she read all of his books, and then him going, yeah, you ain't got it. Yeah, I can see how that like would beat. It would certainly beat me up, and I'm not as confident and cool as Maeve. So I think it did make sense from my perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Like, especially at the point where like he almost reels her in with a bit of like false like praise, because she's the one that's read his previous book, and the one that everybody read was his like second book, and that's the one that he's like, oh, I'm famous for this book, fuck that book, I hate it. And she's like, well, actually, your first book. So he instantly like makes a beeline for her in that, and kind of shines his light on her for a minute, and then takes it away. And it's like, so that like you get a bit of confidence from that, and then you get gut punched. It's like that would take the wind out of absolutely anybody's sails. That's like, that was a really clever setup to almost have you go in there with like Maeve, like, you know, like all guns blazing, and then be chopped down. So that's where I feel like her confidence got knocked. So like that was a tricky part for her anyway.
Yeah, I think I just wasn't feeling, like I said, I wasn't feeling the American scenes. And I think it's because how many shows have you seen over the years, especially college shows school shows, and the show's successful, so they want to keep it going on. And then this season they go to college, but not all the characters because some of the actors have left the show. Do you know what it made me think of? And it's not really a similar show. Do you remember Dawson's Creek back in the day? And they do the season where they go to college. Joey's off at writing college. Holy crap, writing college. It's the same thing. Dawson's off at movie college. Yeah. And it was terrible. And Pacey he wasn't good at anything. So he was a working man and wasn't at college. And but again, what it did is it split up your four main core characters, and they all went off, and they all had their own storylines, and none of them were as good as when they were all together, like we said earlier in the show, which was the same thing that like Marie said about Maeve earlier. I will say, as we get to the end of Maeve's storyline, like clearly we know she's going to land on her feet, right? I love that. Basically, her kiss off to Otis is just like, yeah, cheers for giving me some confidence, and I'm off to start my wonderful new life. I loved her roommate, whose only trait seemed to be shagging, and then she finds a few of Maeve's notes, shows them to a publisher, and Maeve is sorted for a book deal. I mean, it's that easy, folks. Friend of the pod and international crime author Charlie Gallagher would probably throw his TV out of the window if he saw that scene. Oh, I've got to mention this quickly, as I believe you are in Portugal, aren't you, Marie?
Yeah, I am.
One of our friends who's been on the pod a couple of times, he's a former copper turned crime writer called Charlie Gallagher. And his books have just been released in Portugal. And he's had the most bizarre thing on Instagram where the front cover of one of his books is like this woman tied to a chair. He's getting fans of the book sending in pictures of themselves strapped to chairs, trying to recreate the cover of the book. And he's just weirded out massively by it.
I don't know. I don't think I can explain that.
Don't worry.
Not everyone in Portugal, then.
I don't think it's something that we need you to be an ambassador for.
Not everyone.
But that was an interesting factoid from Neil there. That's got nothing to do with sex education.
It was about an author, and we was talking about Maeve's story as an author, so it was vaguely tenuously linked. Right, we're going to move on to another one of my favourite characters, and that is Amy Lee Wood as Amy, which clearly made it easy to remember her character's name. And I mean, she is probably one of my favourite characters in the whole show, with her endless optimism and just she has this caring attitude to every single person she meets. Now, initially, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't like the shoehorning of her and Isaac together, as it felt like they were just like, right, what characters have we got left? Right, boom, those two are together. But as we mentioned, Amy does the right thing all the time when she does have feelings for Isaac. She tells Maeve about it straight away. And Amy has been there for Maeve for everything since season 1. Although one of the funniest bits of the show, and I don't know if it was intended to be such a big joke, but when she throws her deodorant at Maeve's head when she picks her up from the airport, I was just cracking up for about 10 minutes after that. And it just seems like such an offhanded, like, here's some deodorant, and like, it almost smacks her in the head. I almost think like that take was improvised or that throw or something. And I thought, this is fucking hilarious. We're leaving it in there. Because it just seems so natural. I mean, she's always a scene stealer and things like that. And again, I was almost against her deciding to become a photographer because I was like, oh, great, yeah, we give the girl who, the photography. But then, as it developed, I was like, no, this is awesome because her photography was a way for her to confront and deal with her trauma from season 2. And yes, an Amy Gibbs original would be worth a fortune. I mean, look how awesome a friend she was for arranging for everyone to come to Maeve's mum's funeral. She is the nicest person in the cast and easily my favourite, I think, of the original characters. Not connected to sex education, but she was also excellent in the film called Living alongside Bill Nighy the other year, and she should have easily been nominated for like a Best Supporting Actress Oscar or a BAFTA for it. She was that good in it. And to be fair, last time we saw her, though, after that, she's starring in Cabaret on the West End, so I think she's doing okay. So, yeah, Marie, what are your thoughts on Amy?
Absolute queen. But just talking about how talented Amy Lou Wood was, I was meant to see her on the West End, and that was the day, because she was in Uncle Vanya, and that was the day the West End closed for COVID. Like, I was outside the theater, and then they were like, nope, sorry, COVID, shut down, and yeah, I know. I can't even say biggest regret of my life because it had nothing to do with me, but it's like a biggest missed opportunity. So like every time I see her, I can't believe I missed her seeing live on the West End. It was an amazing cast as well. It was her, Richard Armitage, Toby Jones.
Yeah.
Like it was just a star-studded cast. And yeah, if I just saw it the day before, I could have seen her live on the West End. So it's still a bit bittersweet for me.
Brutal.
That memory. But back to the
Amy Lee Woods, if you're listening, our friend Marie needs a ticket to your next show, please. Please make it right. Make it right. Hashtag make it right.
Would really appreciate that, please. But back to sex education, Amy. Yeah, I mean, I think she's an absolute queen. I think she had the most satisfying character arc of the entire series, like from beginning to end. Just her arc and her development, and when she like really struggled in seasons 2 and 3 after her assault on the bus, it was heartbreaking. I just wanted to give her a hug, and like watching her come through that and tying that in with her becoming a photographer, which I think makes like a lot of sense. Like I studied art, and giving her the medium of photography allows, because obviously she sees the world so differently to everyone else. So giving her, like, her being a photographer allows everyone to see the world through her lens. And I thought that was a very good choice. I also just loved her screaming at the construction workers. I think every single woman was cheering her on, just going, yes, living vicariously through it. I mean, I think we all wanted to do that. And her and Isaac, yes, I did also like wasn't like, because it just felt like, yeah, these two are single, let's push them together. But it turned out to be really cute, and I really liked them together. So I was happy about that in the end. Amy is my favorite character of the show, and out of all of them, she had the most satisfying conclusion.
See, I'm going to be controversial again. She was my least favorite character. Like I know, and it's not for like, and it's only because there's such a rich tapestry of characters in there. Like she wasn't bad. I'm not saying that she was a bad character. She was just my least favorite. I loved her relentless. I know Marie's going to leave the podcast now. I'm sorry, I fucked it all up. But she's her relentless optimism was fantastic, and it for me it just wore a little bit thin. like I know relentlessly optimistic people, and they are not that like relentlessly optimistic all the time. I was like, I did like her character a lot, but I don't know. There were other characters that shone so much brighter to me for the things I've been through in my life and the things that I've done. But she is one of the characters in this show that made me ask the questions of myself that like maybe or not questions of myself, but questions like that I never knew needed asking like before. Like I've always wondered about what it's like for women when they walk past a construction site and blokes catcall them. I'm a guy, that doesn't happen to me, and I've asked. I've got two sisters. I've dated women and stuff, and I'm like, what is that like? And they're just like, oh, it just happens. But in that moment, I was like, that's because that's never been a good enough answer for me. I'm like, I don't do that. I don't catcall. I'm not that person. I don't, I'm not wired that way. And it makes me wonder what makes people catcall to start with. I'm just like, why would you do that? Do you think that that's going to be how you're going to fall in love with someone? Is that how your dad met your mum? Like he was working on a construction site and he went, oh, I love lovely fucking legs. Know what I mean? She went, oh my God, you're my perfect man. And just fucking fell in love because I don't see that happening ever. So in those moments, like moments like that made me go, oh, right. Okay. Like she's given a really real response, and probably what's an internal response for a lot of women that would love to be able to go, shut the fuck up. Like, really? Is that really the best you can do? Like, just shut up and try and get on with your job. Wasn't
the line, fuck you, you fucking fuckers?
Yes. I loved it. I loved it. And she does present the world because of her relentless optimism that, might have grated on me a little bit. It showed the worst in people just from their day-to-day lives. The things that lots of people just shrug off. You just like the catcalling. It's a really, really good example. But because of her relentless optimism, which was really important, it sort of makes you go, oh yeah, actually, there's no need to to do that. She's just being a nice person, and that other person is the problem. She shone a light to me on loads and loads of stuff that I was like, yeah, I could probably do that better. Or, I know someone that does that. I should probably have a word with them, So whilst she wasn't my favorite character, I believe that she's probably one of the most important characters. So there's a balance there from me.
Well, moving on, Ben, is perhaps one of your favorite characters the next person we're going to talk about, which is the new Doctor Who, Ncuti Gatwa as Eric.
Yes!
Marie, start us off with Eric if you want.
No, I'm butting in. I'm doing it. I'm going in hard.
I beg your pardon?
Honestly, with my dialogue, Neil. Honestly, what a breath of fresh air! Just the most free-spirited character that I've ever seen on a TV show. Unapologetically fucking free-spirited. I was like, yep. From the very first moment that Eric and Otis get together and hang out on screen, I'm just like, yep, that's perfection. That's fantastic. What a genuinely fucking brilliant character, and how effortlessly portrayed was that. I mean, I could talk for fucking hours about the whole chemistry, about the journey, the character's journey. It's needless to say, I'm hardcore team Eric all the way. Fucking fantastic. And I'm so stoked that they're going to play Doctor Who. I mean, what a fucking brilliant. I love it. Love it. I'm going to stop now.
And hand over to our guest, maybe.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Completely negating the format of the podcast.
Oh God! Again, bit controversial. I think Ncuti makes Eric, but Eric the character did kind of bug me in season 3 when he cheated on Adam, because Adam is just a precious little bean, and he did not deserve that. Yeah, I was really angry at Eric for that, and so it took me a bit to get over that heartbreak, because I generally thought they were a really nice couple as well. And when they get reunited at the funeral, there's one scene they share together. You can still kind of feel that chemistry and that connection. And I just wanted a bit more of that. I did want to see a bit more Eric and Adam. But like, as we said, Adam was in his own bubble this season. Like, I did not like that he was like kept apart from the other cast. But then Eric's journey, I mean, like, he went from like secretly putting on makeup in his bedroom and then quickly wiping it off before his parents saw it to like, yeah, confidently strutting around school wearing makeup and like and at a queer night event. I think, yeah, Ncuti does add so much to the character. And I think one of the best Eric scenes, well, two very good Eric scenes, one hilarious, one very moving. The first one was the accidental dick pic showing of Otis. I mean, he's just like Eric in that scene, Ncuti is just like working it up for the camera. The way he's reacting, it was pure gold. The scene itself, I felt so cringy, but like the way like Ncuti was like putting like pulling the beanie over the other person's head and going like, don't look. It was fabulous. He made that scene what it is. And then the second one was the scene with him, Cal, and Jackson, like on the mountain. And just, that scene got me so excited to see him as the Doctor, because just the like compassion he brought to that scene, I really hope they're going to bring that to the Doctor. Like, I really, like, it's just, you could almost hear the Doctor Who music playing in the background. Like, you could just see him with the sonic screwdriver. I'm so excited for their run. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's weird to think that the next time they're going to be the Doctor, and it's like really cool. I do think Eric, yeah, but as I said, the Eric and Otis conflict bugged the hell out of me. We didn't need to do that one more time. Like, they could have.
Oh, it's best friends, though, isn't it? It's just best friends. Best friends. You're 16, 17. Like, you hate them one week, you love them the next week. It's just you go to extremes.
It's usually the same day, wasn't it, mate?
Sometimes. But like, I do know that like that bugged a lot of people, like that constant like headbutting. But the thing that bugged me, because that didn't bother me, like I just took that as like friends being friends, and just like, you know, like you fall out, but like ultimately you can fall out with your best friend and still have love there, and still like come back to that, and it's really important. It's like I have friends, luckily I have friends all over the world that like I don't see for months, and like sometimes maybe a year or so, and we just pick up where we left off. And for me, that's a very, very similar kind of thing. Like, you know, me and Neil have that. Like, I don't see Neil like for years, like months, and we'll just bump into each other and pick up where we left off. But like, you know, like that relationship wasn't the thing that made me like they gave me pause. It was the whole like where they leave Eric's character at the end of it, where he's like, oh, I'm going to be like it's not a preacher, is he? He's going to be a
pastor.
A pastor. Thank you very much. I was like, all right, okay. Like it took me a minute to quantify that. I was like, oh, that is nowhere near where I was going to see this character going. Although, when you sit with it and you think about it, you're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe a character like Eric would be a fantastic pastor. And I think I'm going to stop it.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's Eric's storyline for the season, mate. It's always been about aligning his sexuality with his religion.
Yeah.
Season 1, he's like hiding the makeup. Season 2, his parents are aware, and his friends are aware, and he's okay in that group. But then season 4, when he goes to college, he's like, oh wait, I'm not the only gay student anymore. There's like gay nights. There's like all this new group of friends. But I thought the funding of the church soup kitchen was going to be like a bigger issue.
Yeah.
And of course, you have that thing when they then go, well, actually, we don't want your money. And he's like, really? Like,
just because I'm gay, you don't want all this money that we're raising for it? Like, it's like fucking ridiculous. And that's for me why, like I was like, I guess he's doing the thing where he's going to change it from the inside, and like it made a lot of sense. But like in the moment, I was just like, oh man, like I was hoping he's like going to go off and see the world, and then come back and you know, and change hearts and minds that way. But like, yeah, maybe it's because I didn't see it coming, and again, it's something that I like. Another question that I need to ask myself, and like, you know, like, oh, why didn't you see that coming, Ben? Like, that's an obvious thing, because I'm not very religious.
Well, I mean, I loved his. I think you kind of for me, I knew he was going to head down that route when you start getting all the. I forget which episode it is, but it's episode 6. Sorry, it's when he starts getting all the fantastical visions and signs from God.
That was weird.
And like you start seeing Black Lady Jesus. It's brilliant. Sorry, Black Lady God. Come on, the song choice. Faith, George Michael. Look, Faith was the perfect song for that scene. You know how I am for like picking the right song for a scene. And I mean, come on, religious connotations of the song, obvious. George Michael's connotations of the song, and the fact it's sung by a gay icon as well in George Michael. So it was just perfect for the scene and the character. At that point, I was like, that is probably the best mix of song and scene for me in the series. But ultimately, Eric can't bring himself to be baptized because he feels he's still hiding who he truly is. And that his answer to that is, well, look, I want to bring, it's going to be okay to be gay and be religious by becoming a pastor himself and sort of teaching that. Laurie Nunn, again, in the interview I listened to last week, she said, for her, the main relationship of the show is Eric and Otis. But Eric and Otis is always going to be friends, and whatever their relationship is, it's always going to evolve down the years.
Yeah, for me personally, like, I don't know, because I'm also not religious, and I grew up in a non-religious household. But yeah, the spiritual visions and signs and talking to God thing, it came a bit out of left field for me. It was a bit random, I think. I like it. It made at first when it was a dream sequence, it kind of made sense. We're like, okay, it's a dream, but then it like translated into the real world, and I was just like, oh, okay, a teensy bit weird. I do like where it led off to, but personally, I don't know. I don't see the world that way, so maybe it's just me, but yeah, I thought those came out of left field. And was that person real, or was he like imagining this random person who was like constantly guiding him? Which it was a bit strange, I think.
Well, moving on to one of the next major characters, and that is, well, just one of the best actresses ever, and that's Gillian Anderson as Jean Milburn.
Yeah,
now, I think you can clear the mantelpiece for all the awards because Anderson continues to be excellent in this final season as she deals with issues surrounding postpartum depression, medication, work worries, and of course the arrival of her absolutely chaotic sister and her traumatic issues as well, which we get explored, some new, some from deep in the past. Marie, what do we think about Jean this season?
I mean, I love Jean. She's always been like a standout character. I was a little bit confused about her like insistent on going back to work immediately, especially since like right after having a baby. I think they say Joy is 8 weeks old, and I don't think it's like they need the money. They seem pretty well off, and it did get explained down the line that the reason she wanted to pursue this career, this radio opportunity, is because she always wanted a bit more for her career, and I completely understand that. So then it kind of made sense to me. But because she always seemed to be like a very established figure in her field and a very successful therapist. And so her like blindly pursuing this new career with a new baby, I didn't understand it until they explained it like during the final episode. And also I think she would have had much more success with a podcast than a radio show.
Yeah, they missed the boat on that one a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah, and it would have been so much more easier. On the town where they live. Like, seriously, where in the UK is it? Because it never rains. I lived in the UK for 4 years. I know this is not possible.
It's a very clever shooting schedule, I think.
But it never rains.
I believe it's near Wales, isn't it? It's in the Wye Valley, somewhere around there. And apparently you can rent their house. It's on Airbnb, apparently, or something like that.
It's for sale. I saw it today.
This is for sale?
Otis and Jean's house is for sale for £1.5 million.
That's definitely going to get inflated because of the show, isn't it?
I offered them 50 quid. Didn't go for it.
Didn't get back to you? No?
No, oddly.
Yeah, not surprised. Good bike tracks, though.
Yeah, I'd love them to that. That'd fucking great.
Ben, Jean, should she have done a podcast then instead of a radio show?
No, because you're missing the aesthetic of the show, Neil. Stop winding me up. Jean Milburn. I mean, come on, like what another great character. I mean, like Gillian Anderson for me has been like has been one of those actors that I've accidentally followed her entire career, because from the X-Files all the way through to Crown, wasn't she, as Margaret Thatcher recently as well? The Fall was phenomenally good. Like, you know, she just pops up. She has, she's had a career break and done some great stuff. Then she went back to Dana Scully in the X-Files. I mean, like, I can't think of a time where I've gone, oh, why did they cast Gillian Anderson in that? That's terrible. Like, there's just
No, never.
no instance. So, like, for her to play this, like, this straight shooting, like, mum who's trying to just, like, figure out life after a divorce, like, raising a kid, who's, like, a really smart kid. For one of her, like, it's not the right thing to say faults of raising a kid, but, like, one of the problems that she's given herself is that she's raised a really smart kid, so the kid challenges her all the time in Otis. Like, to watch, like, a parent struggle with that and also kind of come out on top, but also kind of not, and learn from that and roll with those punches. Like, I can't think of another, like, actor that could have done that job, like, at all. She's exactly the mother that Otis would have. If she was only brought in season 4 and you'd never met Otis's mum, like, Gillian Anderson would have taken the stage and would have gone, "Yep, that's Otis's mum, 1,000%." It just works so well, and she comes in to the school at one point to be the guidance counselor, and, like, in my mind, I'm like, "Oh shit, she's going to end up running the school." Like, this is going to be fucking awesome, and she doesn't, because there's this revolt, and she takes it on the chin, she learns from it, she moves on. Like, she's brilliant at being completely vulnerable and wildly passionate, but within this, like, cocoon of, like, a parent that is just trying to keep it together, as, like, for our kid or kids now.
Slight tangent, and not to really, really piss off our guest, but I saw Gillian Anderson on stage in All About Eve with Lily James. Gillian Anderson on stage, just absolutely amazing. She's gone very quiet, Ben. She's annoyed.
Yeah, I saw. I've never seen her live on stage, but I did see the West End recording of her when she was in A Streetcar Named Desire, and that, like, even just through a recording, that was an amazing performance. I mean, she is a mega talent. Like, I would, like, love to see her live on stage one day. Like, definitely on my bucket list of people I want to see. But she's an amazing talent. Just nails everything she does.
And I think while we're on Jean, we have to talk about Jean's sister, Joanna, who was added to the cast this season, who we briefly mentioned a little bit earlier. And I mean, she's my favourite new character in the show. Like, when Otis can clearly see that Jean's struggling, he just calls her sister up and is like, right. And it works out pretty well for Joanna at the time, because she's currently homeless and in massive debt.
So Joanna is this wild card who, like, they throw in for me just to mix it all up, because they, like, Otis and Jean get to a point
Agent of chaos.
An agent of chaos. They get to a point where they're broing down. They're a good team. Like, this is like mother and son getting it done. So, like, they have to give Jean a bit of a drama to deal with, and obviously, like, a new baby is going to be dramatic. But, like, the way that Otis is dealing with the kid is very much like a big brother would. Like, he's like, yeah, I can do this bit, and I can do, like, the lift up and the feeding thing every once in a while, but, like, ultimately, you're the mum, and you've got to deal with this. So, like, for him to notice that she needs some help and to bring in the wild card was just brilliant. And she comes in hot as well. Like, she doesn't mess around. Like, she gets there and she's like, "I'll fix everything," and then doesn't. And, like, you get the tension from Jean, like, "Oh, you're just this enormous screw up that does, like, I've had to bail out, like, many times in the past." And Joanna's like, "Yeah, but I'm going to be different now." And how many times have you heard that in your life? And, like, just like the second that Joanne and Maeve got together, like, in that scene, I was like, "Oh, this is it. This is it. All bets are off now." Like, you've got, like, the cool kid from school who doesn't give a shit about anything, who's still kind of the cool kid from school, with, like, the cool aunt. Oh, this is it. This is going to be chaos. And, like, that cinema scene was brilliant. It was just two like absolute like shoot from the hip types, just shooting from the hip. It was fucking great. But, like, I did fatigue with her a little bit. I was like, she was so wild card all the time that it was just like, oh, she's going to run out of steam. And when she did run out of steam, it felt disingenuous. which was the only weak point of that family like dynamic was when she went off the rails, disappeared, and came back a bit like a wet squib, and it wasn't quite like, I don't know. That's just one part for me that didn't quite gel right. But what do I know?
I don't know, man. You had the treehouse mud fight between the Milburn sisters, which was like definitely an episode highlight. They just lost it and started running around in the mud outside. That was hilarious. And come on, her Darth Vader collagen mask.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Those masks are a scam, by the way. Don't buy them.
What? I just ordered one.
I mean, you would look great. They make you look cool, but yeah, they're not strong enough for that type of therapy.
Therefore, making me infinitely better looking.
Now, still on Joanna, we have to mention that she falls for a bank employee in a nice meet cute, who we actually find out later on is the father of Jean's baby. And I'd completely forgotten By Command Baby Daddy was in season 1 because he has a really awkward breakfast encounter with Otis.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, he's the first like Jean's man we meet. Like he walks into Otis's room in like the very first scene of season 1, and it took me a very long time to like put 2 and 2 together. But then it also made me realize that the entirety of the show is only like 9 to 10 months. Like what happens in the show, like I thought it was at least a span of a year, but she only like, because by like the end of episode 1 in season 1, Jean's already with another guy, so she's only slept with him once. So it means like the entirety show is like Jean's pregnancy, which is a bit weird.
It definitely feels like a longer time, doesn't it? Yeah,
what?
But yeah, the pregnancy thing, that
doesn't make sense because they go through at least 2 years of school.
But I don't think she sleeps with him again, unless we missed something.
In like season 3, out of camera, between seasons, bumped into each other at some banking seminar. Jean was just accidentally out. I don't know. There's a spin-off series. There's going to be an internet series on YouTube about that. God, you heard it here first, kids. Like it's some sort of Back to the Future-esque relevant problem that we need to sort out.
Does that mean Otis is he's going to fade and see through his hand?
But he's going to be amazing at playing guitar.
Right, moving on. Let's talk Mimi Keen's Ruby. So yeah, I thought she was quite a good foil for Otis. And as we got to episode 4, I was like full team Ruby and Otis. I liked her revenge storyline against O. However, she just gets manipulated by Otis pretty much several times throughout the show. Like whenever they're interacting. And Otis is doing it just for himself. And again, when you forget the storyline with her dad, and that's when they get together in the previous season. And I'm just watching it, I was like, come on, man, it's just justice for Ruby. And to be fair, where her character goes, like when she's like finally like, okay, fuck this guy, I'm gonna get this guy who no one knows about. I'm that good at what I do. I'm gonna get him elected, and she does. But then at the end, her only kind of real character development and storyline was she just wanted to be one of the cool girls again. And I was like, no, like she could have done so much more than that.
Yeah, in my notes, I wrote like, Ruby, babe, move on from Otis. He ain't worth it. Because like he treats her like absolute crap, and like yeah, she does, like she was a bit of a monster in season 1, but then like most of the characters, they all like, we realized like they're mean for a reason. Like it's there's a deeper reason for their actions, and so by the final season, she's almost a completely different person. And yeah, as I said, I don't get the appeal of Otis. I don't know why she's so hung up on him. He treats her like absolute crap and only like uses her to get ahead in that stupid campaign storyline. Like I understand like almost like her falling for grace, like she was the popular kid in the old school, and now she's like the new girl who drives a car instead of a bike, and in this school is that a big no. But yeah, I agree with you that her like I think it was very satisfying going to Otis like, hey, I don't need you anymore, like I've got my friends. But then yeah, her only goal was to popular. But I think she has like a very promising career in PR. I think they kind of set that up, that's going to be her future. Yeah, no, I just, her and Otis, it's, rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like how he was like just manipulating her.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't know. There's elements of their relationship that I can see. Like, I feel like she comes back to him because he rejects her, and there's always an element of that in some relationships. In lots of relationships, there's an element of like you want what you can't have almost. And when he rejects her, like it's clearly leaves a mark, and she's kind of like she's still sort of hung up on that relationship. But I mean, her ending up trying to be one of the cool kids. I think that her whole identity has been that for such a long time. When you go back to her house and you find out that she's not, in fact, like rich, and she's got like a dad who's sick and stuff. Like that was more important to me in her character arc than where she actually ended, or where we saw her end. Because wherever she's going to end up in the real life of this whole thing is going to be different to where we leave her. But like that whole realization of her, like she has to be the cool kid at school because she was never the cool kid at camp, like and had that like horrible like bullying kind of scenario. Really, like that really affected me. I thought that was really important. Like there are things that about that like resonate with me. Like I was never really a cool kid at school, but like I started hanging out with the cool kids at school, and then I moved schools. And it, so like I've seen that.
I was about to say, because when you come to our school, we weren't the cool kids.
Nah, but you taught me how to play guitar, so that was cool. So like there was an element of that, like not as nowhere near as serious as hers, but like it was something that I got a hold of, and I was like, that's really, that means something to me in a way that I can understand. So like that, like her arc, I don't think for me the journey of her arc was as important as the stops that she made on the way in season 4, and how she had to confront something from her past to make a successful campaign and to make these friendships happen. Like she fell from grace, it stripped her right down, but she kind of came back stronger, and that is a really positive message, I think, for anybody watching this show that's ever had any type of like bullying, whether it be like physical, like online bullying, or just like mental manipulation. I think that like her journey, on the points she makes in that journey, is really is really important because of the way that she picks herself up, dusts herself up, owns it, and goes forward to be successful.
Nice, yeah. Let's talk one of the characters who's definitely had one of the biggest arcs over the course of the season, and that's Mr. Groff. I mean, his moving on storyline, I'm kind of 50-50 on it, because I love that the whole idea was he realizes, okay, he needs to change from who he was. He needs to like be a better person, be a better dad, be a better husband, just be better in general. And then realizing, okay, he's moving on, and like in season 4, we start seeing him trying to repair his relationship with Adam, which was nice. The driving lessons were a really nice touch. I loved one of the funniest scenes of the series was his dalliance with the other teacher, and that was just hilarious. And I loved that how the show just didn't concentrate, because it never always did just concentrate on the kids, but like to see the adults, especially Adam's dad, in that situation as well, was just hilarious. But I was a bit like, does he have to get back together with his wife again? Like, is that realistic? What do you think?
I did not expect this show to make me feel so much for the Groffs family. Like, because I like both of them, like Adam starts changing around season 2, but then like his dad, that was still a pretty like awful person and only started changing around season 3. And I generally did not think I would like this character by the end of the series, because like he reminded me a lot about of like the principal I had at school, which was like very focused on academics and like let kids be creative and stuff like that. So, at the start of the series, I really did want to punch him in the face. But then they made me feel so much for him in the end. And yeah, the connection with him and Adam, and like one of my favorite moments, the driver's lessons, but then when he joined Adam's riding lesson and he was on a horse and he just looked so incredibly uncomfortable, but he was willing to do that for his son. I'm also a little split of him getting back together with Maureen, because like she was, I think, kind of pushed aside almost this season, because like in season 3, I think she had like this like strong independent woman arc, like coming into her own, finding her confidence outside of the marriage. and then kind of falling back. But then again, he did do like a lot of work on himself. He's in therapy. He has his little self-help books. He learned how to cook. So I think in the end, he kind of deserved to win her back. But if they would have left it with them being separated, I wouldn't have been mad either.
Yeah, I think it does work either way, doesn't it? Anything on Groff, Ben?
Loads. I loved him. I thought he was brilliant. Like, it was like, honestly, I went on that journey as well. He was the character that I like, was just like, fucking just wind your neck in. Why have you got to be like that? Like, he was so old fashioned, and everybody that I know, at least, and everybody that I know and that at least watches this show, you know, we can all point at that teacher or that person in our life that was like super old fashioned, didn't understand like where we were coming from growing up, didn't want to understand, thought that their agenda was much more important to our future than our own, like, you know, like mindset and internal compass. And to look behind the scenes of that character, it gives me a thought on those teachers that I had growing up. Just like, they were just human as well. They were just putting on their shield to the world, and you see this guy go from like the absolute like authority in the school to like a really humbling journey of like not like never understanding his son, like never, like even where you leave him, like he's got a better idea and you know that he's got a good platform to kind of work from, but he never truly understands him, and he probably never will, because he's that of his time instead of old fashioned. He tries his best, and that is kind of all you wanted to see from that guy in season 1. So like, he has a more complete character arc for me than most people. He tries, he gets knocked back, and he goes back in his shell further than anybody else. Like everybody else in this season, actually in this series, like try something, it doesn't work, they don't get knocked all the way back. They're not completely demoralized. But when he tries something, he's carrying so much like trauma from his past that if it doesn't work, he goes completely back to who he was, goes completely back inside his shell, and doesn't want to try anything again, and that's scary to him. So for him to come out of that shell and like try again and get knocked back and not go quite as far back, to see that like kind of like flower almost when he's riding the horse at Adam's job, and he's just having the time of his life, and he's like, this is great. And you know, and you see part of the trauma of his past when he's living with his brother, and his brother's super successful, living in that like concrete cool like building, and he's like, he works in finance, whatever that means, you know, to this scenario. And you know, he just gets up, he makes that like dish for the dinner, and he's like, everyone's kind of taking the piss out of him a little bit, and he's just like, you know what, fuck you. Like, the reason I'm like this is because of shit like this. So I'm not standing up for it anymore. I'm not perfect. I realise that now. I don't have to be. I'm going to leave. And he pulls himself out of a toxic situation, which, I don't know, man. Like, there's lots of people that wouldn't have the guts to do that. People stay in toxic relationships and toxic situations all the time without realising it. And his character realises it and like does something about it, which I think is hugely powerful for people of that age watching a show like this, to be able to go, hang on, that could be me. I don't have to stay in this situation or that situation. I can be better. I can be this. I can be that. So like, I think I thought his character was fantastic, and his arc was really, again, really, really important for different reasons.
Well, moving on, we're going to talk about two of the other new characters introduced this series, and that was Abby and Roman, the trans couple. And initially, I bristled a little bit against them because I was part of there's too many characters in here. Why do we have to have loads of new characters? We're not going to get enough time to spend with these people. And what I found funny about this series is, right, when we were at Moordale was like the repressed school, like we've just covered with Headmaster Groff in charge. And our characters, all the sexual hang-ups and everything they were dealing with was seen as like abnormal back then. When they get to college, it's the most super PC, over the top, almost, there's just the most inclusive college you'd ever see in the world. In fact, it's almost I almost felt like it was taking the piss slightly out of those representations, because it was so over the top, the college, you know. like I said, the early seasons were really heralded for being really inclusive of pretty much every sexual orientation, preference, and gender. And that's why our characters stood out in the early seasons, because they were trying to stand out against that. But sex education as a show has always been at the forefront of handling like LGBTQA issues way ahead of the curve. But now the characters are at college, it's almost like they were kind of poking fun at the same representations they were championing in the early season, because almost every new character we meet at the college is just boiled down to a simple, either a gender ideal, a sexuality, or a disability, it almost seemed like. So when we meet Abby and Roman, I was like, okay, but this feels like tokenism to a point to me. But having said that, as the show developed, as the season developed, they got storylines that wasn't just them. It wasn't just about them. So I liked how it wasn't the storyline. I mean, a lot of times when a show first sort of portrays a character, it's quite reductive in this way for me. They are their traits, they are their sexuality, they are their ethnicity, and there isn't a lot more to the character than that. And I thought, okay, there's just going to be the trans couple in the show. But what I loved about it was, as the show develops, you see that Abby, she genuinely is really nice. And she helps Eric, and she bonds with Eric over his religious hang-ups, and they share their background of being religious and growing up that same way. Roman helps Cal with their experience of transitioning, and apparently all the stuff to do with the waiting times and the costs involved, which is mentioned in their storyline, was something the actor playing Roman, Felix Mufti, had experienced in their real life. So they took their experience from what they experienced and put it into the show. And I thought that was really well done. And also, I mean, that's probably the first time they've had a trans sex scene of that graphic nature in a mainstream show, right? And it's portrayed off as something normal. It's portrayed as, a loving relationship. And that's, I think, the big issue with the show. What it needs to do, and what it does brilliantly, is it normalizes all these different things that people maybe not aware of.
Yeah, I think you covered like nearly all of it. I'm the same, like especially around season 3, I was feeling a lot of character fatigue. Like there were so many characters to keep up with, and then they almost like had like this excuse to like scale down the class by like switching schools. But then we get to the school, and there's even more characters to keep track of, and it like at first it was a bit like almost like going to a new school. It was a bit overwhelming. Like you saw, like, met all these new different people. But what this show does so well is their characters and their struggle. It's a character-driven show. And I think they did an amazing job telling those storylines and winding in the new characters with the old ones, where we've got Eric like finding his like queer community finally in the school, and then Cal getting also support from them. And I think it worked really well. So I think they were a welcomed addition once again. Like, I think when it comes to characters, this show, it overwhelms you, but it doesn't do anything like. But then it does no wrong, because like they're so good at writing characters.
I know from when I listened to the interview with the creator Laurie Nunn, she said they like when you see like the diversity in the show, that's what the writers' room for the show's like. So, you have everyone of all the different genders and ethnicities and all that, all the different kind of breakdowns of the people you see in the show. That's in the writers' room. So that's probably why the representations for most people ring true, because they are being written by people from those communities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm loving this. This is great. Like, I didn't know anything about like the writers' room of this show. I assumed as much, but I think that's it's such a good representation. Like it's so well done. But Abby and Roman, I had the same like trepidations going into this new season with these new characters. I kind of leaned more Roman than Abby. There was something about Roman. I don't know if it was like a really good genuine Scouse accent on TV for once.
It's a Scouse accent, yeah.
Like proper really like it's a proper genuine Scouse accent, and it just suits the character. Obviously, it's whether it's their accent or not, it doesn't really matter. But there was something about it just really down to earth and wholesome, and sort of on the receiving end of like kind of the shit end of the stick in a trans relationship. It was just it's like, yeah, guys, this is relationships all over the world. Whichever person you choose to like fall in love with, or sometimes you don't choose, the problems are the same relationships are the same. It doesn't matter about your gender. It doesn't matter about your background. Like, everybody has the same fucking problems in their relationships. And again, it's why Sex Education to me is like such a super important TV show, because like it normalizes so much stuff for people that don't realize they need stuff normalized. So yes, like Abby and Roman, everybody got their moment as well, which is something I keep meaning to bring up. Like, it doesn't matter how many like people like they cram into this show. Everybody has a moment, and the Roman Cal like moments for me were like, that's fucking great. Like, there is someone that needs help, that is struggling in life, doesn't know how to talk about it, finds common ground with someone they probably wouldn't have found common ground with before, like for whatever reason, and is getting that first step of help. And when Cal goes missing in that episode, it's like you feel it from, like, I felt it from like Roman's point of view almost more than anybody else's, because it was like, oh God, we've had these moments, like we've had these things, and have I done something to trigger this? Almost, there was a feeling of that. I don't think it was never really spoken about. It was never said, but like you could almost read it on Roman's face, just being like, fucking hell, like was that, did I do the wrong thing? Like, did I, and it's just really fucking real. And you don't have that episode, which is a huge episode. You don't have that without these new characters, without all of the new characters, but especially Abby and Roman.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned there, we'll move on to Cal. I think Cal's storyline was really important, and it's played brilliantly by Dua Salah. As they dealt with the pressure as a transition, I honestly thought the show was going to take a super dark turn in that episode. But I'm thinking, no, we're like one episode away from the end. They can't pull this close to the end of the show. There's like no way. But I mean, but they made you question it as you're watching it. When they're looking at the CCTV footage. Although that was another brilliant Ruby moment there, wasn't it? When she's the girl who was obsessed with her at high school. And oh hey, that's how he was able to bring a bit of levity to the situation.
She's actually here.
She's like, yeah, well, basically we're best friends now. She's on her phone. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah. Whoever that young actress was playing that role, she was superb. I was thinking, I've written in the notes, and I can't remember what I actually meant by this now. I said, thankfully, Eric finds Cal right before, but isn't that when Eric's having one of his visions? Yeah. So you could argue that kind of God leads him to saving Cal there.
Can we?
In Eric's mind, because Eric's the one seeing the vision. I know you're not going to go big on the coffee. I'm not religious either, man. I think that's the way it was portrayed in the show. Or as an option anyway, because then at the same time, Jackson turns up. And you're like, okay, he's been saved by two people who were probably, well, Jackson obviously and him kind of had their on and off, will they, won't they kind of thing in the previous season. And they just tell Cal they're there for him, which, it was a lovely moment. I mean, talking about Jackson, played by Kadar Williams-Sterling, I thought he was underserved because, again, he was quite a main character in the previous seasons. He's had a lot of character development, and he was just boiled down, again, like the rest of the characters, like Adam a bit, separated away from the main characters, off to the side. And his two storylines were pretty much testicle cancer scare and who is my birth dad, sperm donor storyline, which, I mean, at least it tied into the cancer scare storyline. And I know when I've done it, they've won it because, again, it's an issue that people raise. Go and get yourself checked out, right? Go and young people do go for this, and young people are less likely, probably, to check for things like that. So I absolutely understand why it's a storyline and they did that, but it didn't feel connected, and he didn't feel connected to the main cast as he had in previous seasons again.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, it took Jackson way too long to find Cal. Like, I immediately knew that Cal went to that spot that they went to in season 3. Like, the fact that it took Jackson so long to realize it, like, it just was like, I'm like, I know where, like, because as soon as he goes missing, I thought, oh, he went to that lookout point. And as I was watching it, I was like, Jackson, you've been there together. Like, come on, realize it. So I think it just took him too long. But yeah, Cal's story was real. It was also like almost the entire like narrative arc of the final season, because it came to the conclusion of them raising the money for them, and so they could get top surgery, and it was really important. It was such a significant storyline. I read an article by Jamie Rain, who is known as Jammy Dodger on YouTube. He just wrote the T in LGBT book, which came out like a few months ago, and he wrote a very nice article for Attitude magazine, where he writes, Cal's storyline explores many elements of being trans, such as gender dysphoria, the ups and downs of testosterone, trans healthcare or the lack of, and social pressures and views of trans identities. And I think he summarizes that so beautifully. And it culminated in that beautiful moment of them with Eric and Jackson on the cliff, where Eric gave that beautiful speech. It could have gone very dark, but I'm happy that it had like a slightly happier conclusion to that story, because the show itself is a comedy, so it would have really surprised me if they
that would have been a big downer
down that road, especially in its final episode. It would have been a massive downer, like for the final episode, because it tackles serious issues, but it's still, and it goes dark, but it doesn't go that dark. So but yeah, it was touch and go for a second. We didn't know like what was going to happen.
Yeah, they when I was looking at the CCTV stuff, was when he seen him put the bag, and I was like, oh, yeah,
why did he dump the bag? Like, exactly. Obviously, when any teenager leaves their phone behind, it's immediate panic.
It's a big red flag.
To lead into, to go back to the Cal Jackson relationship, there was a moment for me that was like, when Cal and Jackson got together and they were making out like in Cal's room, and Cal says, "You do realize if this is a thing, this is going to be a queer relationship?" And I was just like, "Oh fuck yeah, it would be." That didn't cross my mind. Like it was just because you're that far through that you're just like it's just another relationship. It's just a thing that's happening. But like Cal did a very responsible thing and stopped and just went, "Look, do you realize what it is that you're getting yourself into?" And Jackson that's the point where he doesn't do a U-turn, but he's just like, "Yeah, like am I ready for that? Is that a thing that I'm willing to get into?" Like it makes him ask a lot of questions, and in turn, like it raised another point that I hadn't thought of. I was just like, "Oh, these two are getting together. That's really adorable." And then you're just like, no, there's connotations way past what you're looking at on the screen there, but you got to really like fucking think about these things. And it was, yeah, again, like it made me ask another question that I wasn't aware that needed to be asked. So it's fucking, great work on, for just a tiny, 30 seconds of TV. It just opened another door for me. I was just like, yeah, fucking great.
And I say, moving on to the last character I've got on my list, because we've been at this a while now. Viv gets one storyline to play with sadly this season, and it's that her new boyfriend Beau is a bit of a coercive control wanker. And initially you're like, oh, he seems like a really nice guy. He's a bit awkward and then you're like, nah, he seems a bit weird. There's something off. And then I think that was really layered in well, because every episode your suspicions are kind of like raising up, and like I think episode 6, and it's Jackson, of course, who starts spotting it. He's like, I don't know, that guy seems a bit. And then episode 7, yep, he's definitely like the psycho nice guy, in quotes, as you see, when he grabs her in episode 7. And, it's all the text messages. And again, that's an issue that loads of people are dealing with these days, especially youngsters. And this kind of being harassed by text and all that kind of stuff. And again, the show just dealt it. I think the show did a really good job of that, bearing in mind they didn't have a lot of scenes to establish it compared to the main characters. And so bringing in a new storyline, bringing in another new character, but still going, right, this is the issue we want to go. I love to have seen the writer's room, just how they plotted it all out on like the big whiteboard. Right, well, we've only got enough space for this. And imagine it looks like, you see the gif of Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia when he's trying to figure out all like the crazy stuff. That's what I imagine all writers' rooms are like, to be fair. I think I'm just going to skip to my last bit I'm going to have kind of had for this was like, I think the show should have finished though with a flash forward, because if you're going to do a school show or a college show, you need to know what these characters are doing down the line. You need that flash frame or freeze frame moment of them, and then Otis went on to do so-and-so. So what I've got is, I'm going to run through the characters we just talked about again, and I want you to tell me where you think they are in the future. So we're going to start with Otis. Marie, where do you think Otis is in the future?
Otis, I think he follows in his mom's shoes and becomes a therapist. I don't think I have like that much of an interesting input on Otis. I think that is his future. He follows in his mom's shoes and becomes a therapist.
Yep, Nepo baby Otis.
Sorry, I'm really hating on Otis.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
It's not fine.
So Ben, where have you put Otis? What's Otis doing in your world?
Otis gets his head out of his arse, books a fucking plane ticket to America, and goes and hangs out with Maeve and helps kids in America with their sexual problems, and then becomes fucking president.
You can't become president unless you're American, Ben.
You don't know that.
I mean, it's literally like Schwarzenegger can.
Maybe you do know that, but it's a TV show.
Amazing. For me, yeah, same as everyone. Otis is definitely going to still be a sex therapist. Potentially, maybe working with O. You never know. I mean, if she was around long enough as a character to kind of be established a bit more. And I did have there, eventually crawls back to Ruby ? But no, I think Ruby's off and doing her own thing and like, fuck you, Otis. Maeve. Yeah, exactly. What do we think Maeve's doing?
Hopefully a published writer. Like, she's on her path. I really did like her roommate giving the pages to the publisher, because at first I thought she was going to rip off Maeve's idea. So I thought that was a nice touch. But yeah, I think Maeve is off living her best life without Otis, and finished her first book, is currently working on her second one, sending back checks to help. Checks, that's very old school. But sending money to help support her sister, being there for her sister because her brother was never there for her. So I think Maeve, hopefully she's living her best life.
Yeah. Ben?
All right, get this. Maeve is at writer's school, okay? Living her best life. She's doing a great, great job. She sells her first book. She gets published. She gets a bit of money behind her. Then she gets a bit of writer's block. She's getting into like her early 20s now. She's thinking, I've got to follow this up. She writes a book about her Moordale school experiences called Sex Education, which gets picked up by Netflix and turned into a TV show.
Nice.
It's a full circle, baby.
You've had that in your back pocket for a while, haven't you, man?
I literally just thought it up just right now.
Of course you did. Yeah, I've got to agree. Yeah, I mean, for me, she's a successful author. She's living a good life. I think she stays in the States. And Maeve can do whatever she wants because she was the main character of the show. Eric, we're going to move on to Eric. Eric's fairly simple, I think.
Eric, well, I don't know. I see a TARDIS in his future.
That would be a twist.
That would be a twist. Yeah, I think Eric, because of course he's a very driven and persistent person, like pursues his dream of becoming a pastor, but at the same time develops a drag persona and puts on drag shows in the basement of the church. I see that for him. Just continuing being fabulous.
You can't better that. That's amazing. The only way you can better that is by saying he became a drag pastor, like, and did full sermons in drag, and it was fucking incredible. Every Sunday, every sermon, there was a glitter bomb that explodes, and it's fabulous with Jesus. I think it's just fucking brilliant. I'm in. I'm a fucking 100% in.
Pastor Fab. So I've got Pastor Eric, Fabulous Jesus now. That's better than what I had, so that's what I'm going with. Right. We've got Adam. What's Adam doing?
Adam is bought a farm. Is living with like 10 dogs and a couple of horses. Just, I don't know. Because they didn't do much with him in the season. I see Adam happy with animals, like finding happiness with animals in some sort of way.
Ben,
I mean, yeah, Marie just realised what she said there. Not that kind of way.
Yeah, not happy that
way. Oh dear. I think Adam has become the farmer from Hot Fuzz. You know, the guy that I think he's just sick of people. He's like, fuck people. They just cause me too much stress. He loves animals. He goes up into Gloucestershire and he's got his farm and he turns into that guy. And then he's on Hot Fuzz. He's in Hot Fuzz for a minute. So
Hot Fuzz is, in your mind, is a sequel to Sex Education.
Perfect crossover.
Yeah, I have Down on the Farm with Horse Girl and some dogs. So next up we've got
you are
Amy.
letting the side down here, mate. You are letting the side down.
Well,
Just
If I
stop reading your notes fucking word for word and have some creativity in it. Come on, what's up with you?
Oh my god, it's been a long day.
Horse girl, farm, dogs,
dags.
dags.
Yeah. So, Amy, yeah.
Amy, she has an exhibition in the Tate Modern. Just her photography. Her melon sells for millions of dollars. That's not a sectoral innuendo. I see her happily single, even though, like in the show, she was always tied to a character. But I think she could stand on her own. But if her and Isaac become this art power couple, I'd be happy with that as well. Yeah, I see her work in the Tate Modern. She might do a stint on the West End. But yeah, but also like just being her amazing maverick self, like just embracing who she is all the time.
Nice. Ben?
The first thing that popped into my mind was that she just starts a band. She starts a band, goes on tour, like they somehow support the Rolling Stones. And then she like finishes that and does something else, like as a stint as a cardiac surgeon. You know, like she's got that kind of energy. You know.
Do you know what? You've given me an idea. I'm going off list, Ben. I'm going off notes.
Congratulations.
There's going to be a film about the Amy Gibbs story, and it's going to be basically like Forrest Gump, where she just goes between all these amazing, like world-changing situations, and Amy's just there in the middle of all these things.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
like she said,
world peace achieved because Amy Gibbs told people to stop being dicks. You know.
Yeah, that's the one. Well done. See what happens when you go off book.
That's mental pressure, man. Mental pressure. Right. We got Jean next.
Jean like has an extremely successful radio show. She becomes like the #1 sex therapist in the world. She also starts a podcast because who listens to radio anymore? And #1 on Spotify, putting all of us to shame.
It's not hard.
Yeah, and yeah, I also see Jean happily, like, content with, like, well, she still has a child to raise at this current moment, but like happily content, doesn't need a man, strong, independent woman, just being fabulous as well.
I think that she doesn't just start a podcast. I think she invents podcasting in this universe. Jean Milburn invents the podcast because she can do it from home. She can, like, you know, it's much more convenient. And her producer, I forget the woman's name, the Australian comedian that is phenomenal, by the way, is like her cohort. They sell it for millions, and she goes and like she buys houses all over the world, and strikes up a strange friendship with David Duchovny and has her own UFO podcast.
I knew you was going to get to that. I knew you were going to bring her back to the X-Files somehow, man.
I'm a 90s kid. Give me a break.
Right. Well, for me, I think she's going to be exactly where she was and dealing with all the same shit she had with Otis, except with Joy now, because Joy's now a teenager and putting her through the exact same amount of shit she had with Otis. But she's going to get into politics in the 80s and maybe become Prime Minister of the UK. But that's not enough for her, so she's also going to become President of the United States and be Eleanor Roosevelt as well. And perhaps she can jump in, shoot his TARDIS with him and go back, so she can do that. So Gillian Anderson is now going to be in Doctor Who with Ncuti Gatwa and go back and like being stuff. And that's also, I mean, you might as well bring Amy into it as well then. And that explains how she ends up in all these world-changing situations where she's like the force for good and changes the universe.
Did you really write notes on all that?
Not that one. No, I was
fantastic.
Going through Wikipedia trying to think, did she play Margaret Thatcher? I'm fairly certain she did because I never watched The Crown. I was like, yes, she did. And then underneath it was Eleanor Roosevelt. I was like, right, yep, I'm going to tie those together somehow. Ruby, what do we think Ruby's doing?
Ruby works in PR, maybe repping a very cool rock band, hooking up with the guitarist, but, you know, letting him know who's boss, and not thinking about Otis whatsoever.
I like it. I like that. I think she's going to be Prime Minister. And
Motherfucker.
I think, yes!
I literally had that down there.
Yeah, I think she's going to be Prime Minister, and she is going to figure out all of the pointless problems that we have in this country. She's going to get rid of all of those, but she's accidentally going to bring in a few incidental problems of her own. And I think some of those problems is that she's going to make it really, really cheap to film movies in the UK. So loads of actors decide to relocate over here, and it's going to be a very big problem for the economy because they get huge tax breaks. So we take a dive. Hollywood loses a bunch of stars, and the whole system is thrown into chaos. But she rides that wave. She rides that wave, and she does it well.
She gets re-elected again for another 2 terms.
she's the first 4-term Prime Minister.
Yeah, because everyone was like, "There's no one better. Just put her in again.
Just keep doing it." Like she made a couple of mistakes. She gives a shit. She's great.
We got some really good films out of it.
We got some of the best UK films out of it.
And we're going to jump straight to Beau. So Beau is the last character we're going to talk about. Beau was the coercive control wanker. Where do we think Beau is now? And yes, it's absolutely fine to say in prison. Or do we think he got help and got better?
I was going to say in a ditch somewhere.
Ben, any advance on a ditch?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know. So part of me wants him to realize the error of his ways, but I think it's going to be a rocky road. I think he's going to be physically abusive with a partner who is like a Krav Maga expert, and he's going to have all of his limbs broken. And then he's going to have to lay in hospital for months thinking about what he did and where he went wrong. He's also then, whilst he's in rehab, gonna try it on with his nurse, who's going to put him in his place and back into a hospital bed. And then he's going to realise the error of his ways. He's going to work at Starbucks because he's got a degree, like most people at Starbucks. And that's it. He's going to have a very, he's going to be all right. He's going to be okay. He's just going to live a very middling life after being humbled for his terrible, terrible ways.
I mean, okay, we've got ditch, hospital, repeatedly beaten up. I had in prison for stalking. Just never gets, just keeps doing it. But yeah, let's go. Sex Education was generally a positive show, right? So we're going to say he realised he was being a knob. He got help. And he became a decent human being? No, I'm getting... podcast is an audio format, folks, but if you could see the looks on my 2 guests' faces today, they are not buying it. They want him in a ditch. They want him in traction.
Sex Education is a positive show, apart from the 2 main characters never got together, really, to have any meaningful relationship. Therefore, this bad guy, who I don't understand why we're ending on, by the way, is definitely going to get his comeuppance in some way or another. Like, you know what? It's probably going to be Amy that puts him on the straight and narrow because she's on this enlightenment journey. So she'll probably find him in hospital at some point and go in a lovely northern accent that, you need to sort out your shit and I'll help you. And she makes him better.
Nice. Like it. Well, the last thing I actually did ask for listener comments, but I did only put it on mid-time this afternoon. So
why do you do that? All the time.
Forget.
I asked for listener comments, but I only put it on 3 minutes ago. So we haven't got any. Fucking well.
Do you remember that once when there were so many that we couldn't put them all in? Oh no,
yeah,
it was a Lockwood & Co. one episode.
That's an embarrassment of riches. That's what you want.
I wasn't used to getting that many comments. It was the Lockwood & Co. stands, man. They just absolutely shared our podcast everywhere that episode. Anyway, our one heralded comment from the Box Tunnel Survivors group at Box Tunnel Pod. And this is a Being Human podcast where they review that show and go back through it.
I love that show.
I've never seen the show, so I haven't listened to it.
Oh my God, you've never seen Being Human?
I'm going to be honest about it. No.
You've never seen it?
But this isn't a Being Human podcast.
You love it!
No, but I know I probably would, but there's lots of stuff out there, Ben. The Box Tunnel Pods comment. And they said, it was great considering some cast didn't come back and they moved location. Funny, crude and heartfelt. It still had all the beats and that made it a success. It's the right time to end the show now too. Right, I think that we're about there. Marie, I'd like to thank you for coming on. Where can people find you on the socials and online?
You can find the podcast, Two Girls, One Reusable Cup, on all major streaming platforms. We also have Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me personally at Life on Mars. And you can follow my co-host, Beth, at Sustainable.
And Ben, as we've established, you don't like people tracking you, so you don't want anyone to know where you are. Or even if you're in the country.
That's my own reason, and you shouldn't ask about that in a public forum. I just don't have anything interesting to say outside of this podcast. And even in this podcast, I don't have that much interesting to say. So if you want to follow me, good luck.
Good luck finding you, basically. Yeah, if you want to follow us, we are at Needed Roads on Twitter. I've just been given a Blue Sky invite, which is a whole other thing I'm trying to set up. So it's like Twitter, but the guy invented Twitter without being Elon. So it's looking quite good so far. But like, it's way too much. I've got Threads. We've got Instagram that David never updates. It's been like updated like 2 times in a year. And I keep trying to convince Jose to do the TikTok. Someone asked us to do a YouTube. I was like, no, that sounds like way too much like the day job and too much work, because there's loads of really good video, cinema, and film and TV podcasts out there. So, if you like what you've been hearing, though, you can find us at all your major podcast platforms. Give us a 5-star review, you utter bastards.
Takes like 2 seconds.
And what better way to end our sex education podcast with a bad pun? So, thanks for coming.
We needed roads.